Okay, good. So it's at least some of you can hear me, which is good. The levels look low to me, but start telling me if you guys are not hearing me well enough, and I'll do what I can. If I look a little different than my usual setup, it's because I am got my Mac up on a standing desk now. And we'll see. So you can see a slightly different angle of the office behind me than you usually do. So this is my luck. I set up a standing desk, and the very next day hurt my leg at the gym, trying to make myself more, trying to improve my health and not wreck it. And instead, then I was like, okay, apparently I'm supposed to stay off my foot now for a couple of weeks, and so yeah. But here I am standing at least for now. I wrapped it and whatnot, but but you guys didn't tune in to hear stories of my gym injuries, did you? You came to celebrate the 7th anniversary of Daron's Guitar Chronicles, which has been running now continuously online since November 2009. Sorry, me and numbers. I'm just all numbers start to be the same to me. I didn't really expect this to necessarily go on for 7 years. But I'm very glad that it has, and I'm really glad you guys have been a part of it. It's not like I'm not busy with lots of other writing projects, so but yeah, it's been one of the most fulfilling artistic things I've done in my entire life, of course. So, all right, I see a bunch of people popping into the chat. So, I should plug the giveaway. I was going to show you guys. So I usually do a giveaway during these chats. Somebody who asks a question in the YouTube chat or who texts me something. Oh, I can make my little text machine message go away, but actually I should put it back up again so that you can, if you need to text me a question because you want it to be a private question, you don't want your name to appear in the chat or whatever, feel free. I've got my phone here. I'm not playing Pokemon Go in the background while you guys are chatting. But so I usually do a giveaway, kind of put everyone's names in the hat and pick somebody. But you guys basically have everything Daron related that there is, except the stuff that I'm about to mail you in the Kickstarter pretty soon. So I didn't want to just give you all something you already have. So I thought, all right. As you know, Tower Records is a big part of Daron's history and whatnot. And although Tower Records is bankrupt here in the United States, and there's no more Tower Records, and it's very sad, in Japan there is still Tower Records, and it is really, really just like Tower Records used to be here, except a lot of it is in Japanese, obviously. But they sell merch. So while I was in Japan earlier this year in September, I went and bought. So this is a CD holder. And I have some. I thought these were pens. Actually, it turns out they're really good mechanical pencils, Tower Records mechanical pencils. So I have a little Tower gift pack, and I'll put in some DGC tchotchke also, in case you don't already have the bumper sticker, the lick-on tattoos, etc., or you're not about to get them in the Kickstarter packages. I should give you guys a Kickstarter update. While I'm at it. So the main thing that's been holding up the Kickstarter is me, that I was trying to finish the proofread of the book itself. Oh, here, I can give you the image of what the cover of the new omnibus is going to look like. Our fabulous designer, Gilly Rosenthal, made it look like a road case with, band stickers on it and whatnot, and just great job. I love her. She's been great, and it's been really great to pay her a very nice professional rate, thanks to the money that came in through the Kickstarter. Otherwise, you would have gotten me, I don't know, pasting in some stock art that I bought somewhere, like I do on the small paperbacks and the ebooks, right? Although I found some nice images, but it's just really nice to have a designer who really knows what she's doing. So the one thing is she does the interiors also, and then she sends me a PDF of all 400 pages to proofread. And the idea was for me to try to get the proofread done before I left for Japan in September, so that then we could have the books done right when I got back. And that did not happen. And I proofread on the plane on the way there, and I proofread on the plane on the way back, and I was still proofreading this week and was close to getting it finished. And then I got page proofs from my publisher in New York on one of my heterosexual rock star books, and had to literally was FedExing those today at 6:30 p.m. right before running up here to set up the computers for the chat. So that's what my day has been like. Yeah, so it's like I had exactly enough hours to do all the proofreading I needed to do and put all the stickers in, and boom, off it went. I should have taken a picture of that. I love the picture of the manuscript with all the little sticky notes sticking out of it. But but that's done. So now I can get back to proofreading Daron. I think I have about 70 pages left to do. And yes, a bunch of you have helped me out by also doing a passive proofreading, but I really feel like it's my responsibility to make sure I have looked at every page myself. And there are little things that I pick out that, that other people might not notice, or, whatever too. So I just feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that I've seen every page before I make a finished product and send it all to you. So that's what's holding up the Kickstarter. As usual, it's my fault. But it's coming. It's getting very close, and yeah, we'll have those. I'll usually try to get local folks together who are in the Boston area to come and pack the packages some afternoon. It takes 2 or 3 hours to pack everybody's stuff up, and then we'll get pizza or Chinese or something. So I'll be in touch when that happens. But yeah, so let's see. So anyway, put some questions into this chat window here for me, so that you can be entered to win the giveaway stuff, or I will not give it to anyone, and then that will be a tragedy. Or I'd have to come up with some other thing, right? You know that no thing will ever go completely ungiven away in my universe. I'll always come up with some excuse for how to give things away to you. But yeah, ask me some questions. Nobody emailed me any questions in advance this time, so or if they did, I didn't get to reading all my email today, and so if it came in today, I may have missed it. Yeah, anyway. Okay, I'm checking my other chat window to make sure everything is all right, and this computer's making some not good noises. Hopefully everything's fine. Ping me in the chat or in my text. Actually, I'm going to take that down now so you don't have to stare at that all the time. But, yeah, let me know if things start to go wrong technically, because I am my own producer here. It's just me. There's nobody else here like running the equipment or anything. So, the being a radio disc jockey was a good prep for this kind of work. Because when you're DJ, you're completely alone. You're in a building by yourself with your turntables and your tape decks and your microphone and whatnot, and you are often the only one in the entire building. It's like if it's during the day, okay, maybe there's news people around and there's office people and there's salespeople, whatever, but if you're on during the night, you're the only one in the building. And my first experience in radio, for those who don't know, was I basically started out as a kind of intern at WPLJ in New York City, and someday I have to write my memoirs so that you can all get up to speed on how this all happened. But if Bonnie's in this chat, she knows this story because she's known me for so very long. We've known each other since we were 10. So I think we met in 4th grade. Yeah. So anyway, I worked at WPLJ where I was. How much of the story can I tell? This will take the entire hour if I tell this whole story, so I'll just tell you a small part of the story. The part that I cannot go into because it is a can of worms is that I ran a Menudo fan club. Yes, Menudo. I ran the largest Menudo fan club in the world. I created it and ran it myself. And this led to a gig reading the Menudo news on the air once a week on Friday nights in New York City. So I took the train into the city, and every Friday night, and for several months, a friend of mine came with me, and then eventually, my parents decided that I was responsible enough to do it on my own. So when she went away for the summer or whatever, I just started doing it by myself, and yeah, so yeah, I don't know, anyway, so that was my first experience in radio. So when I got to college, I looked into the college radio station. As it turns out, the college where I went to had not only your usual sort of underground college indie AM station, they had a professional middle of the dial FM station. So I worked at WBRU in Providence, where I, in fact, worked my way up to being staff director, because that's how I roll. But it meant being on the air a lot, in the middle of the night and in the summer, and so forth and so on. And you spend a lot of time where you're completely alone and you are in charge of all this equipment, and tens of thousands of people, or potentially hundreds of thousands of people, are out there listening to you. To this day, although not as often as I used to, I still have the DJ nightmare, which is that there's dead air. It's like the one thing that you don't want is for it to sound like nothing's happening, right? You always want there to be a constant sound. And so if the record skips in the middle, or, tape breaks, or, whatever, it's like you have to fill in. But if you're talking on the microphone, you can't be running around doing other things, but you are the only person there. So you have to come up with a way to fix your problems. And when you have this nightmare, it's often that, you've gone off the air because aliens are invading, or if it's me anyway, something is happening. And the more you try to fix the problem, the worse it gets, and meanwhile, in your mind, you're ticking through how much time has the dead air been going on, is it 5 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever. And it's just, yeah. But yeah, the DJ nightmare. So I don't have it as often as I used to, but I used to have it quite often. Where it's like the worst thing you can possibly imagine is just that there's no sound coming out of the radio, and people out there are just cut off from your source of music and happiness and light. And I don't know. When I was growing up in New Jersey, the lifeline was, before MTV, the lifeline was the radio. And then even after MTV, just the college stations and, things that we used to get, you could tune, it was like this mystery section of the radio dial where you just, and even the mainstream stations, still, you would hear stuff and you're just like, what is that? And it was like a whole parallel world that you had to find out about, and you had to go and, like buy Rolling Stone magazine and try to find out who is this and what, whatever. And it was before the internet. It was like the world of rock and roll was this secret land where you, that you had to be inculcated to, or initiated to somehow, so, but okay. So some questions, let me see what you guys are asking, because I'm going to answer the questions, of course, too. It's not just to get you guys to ask questions so I can enter you into a drawing. It's so that I can answer some questions. Let's see. And by the way, if I miss your question somehow because it scrolls by, feel free to repeat them too. Let's see. As both an author and a publisher, how do you feel about long lead times between submitting something and hearing back, or never hearing back sometimes? Yeah, that's one of those things. I am just as guilty of it as every other editor and publisher out there, I think, where, you have, on the one hand, when you're an acquiring editor, you are doing two things. You are acquiring new work from, the slush pile, or from, submissions and whatever, including from authors that you've already worked with. And then it's also your job to be the person in the publishing house who essentially shepherds the manuscript through the whole production process, through the marketing process, through, whatever. So not only are you doing the actual editing of, reading over the work, advising the author on how to rewrite it, and then, even doing usually like a copy editing, line editing pass, whatnot like that. And then being the interface to the author with when it goes through a copy editor, and then it goes through a proofreader, and, so forth and so on. And then you're also writing the catalog copy, and you're having meetings with the marketing department and the publicity department. Of course, in the case of my small publisher, I am also the marketing department. I am the publicity department. So I don't have to have meetings with myself, but I have to do the work then, so, are we going to create advertising? Are we going to, whatever, are we going to do price promotions on Amazon? Editors spend a lot of their time doing that. And the question is, how much of their time should be spent taking care of the authors that they have already signed up, and whom the publishing house has paid, for their manuscripts and so forth, and how much of it should be spent on bringing in new work. And the thing, of course, is that you get many, many hundreds of times the submissions than you probably have actual time to read. So, there's no real solution to this problem. I mean, other than if 90% of it was going to be rejected outright. Now, I mean, people have told me they're seeing their slush pile go down because a lot of people are just going straight to self-publishing, and so they're just not getting as many submissions. But I think that just means that they're, I don't know. To answer the question, I mean, it's just there's no good way, I think, to make submissions speed up, or it takes a long time to read a novel, and but people don't want to be judged on just their first 2 pages either. So it's like, people who answer fast are the ones who are not really looking at the work very carefully, and the ones who answer slowly are the ones who are the people you really want to work with the most. So, it's sort of a catch-22. And then the ones who sometimes you just never hear back at all. I mean, just between turnover and whatever. I mean, I'm working with Tor now, which is one of the big science fiction publishing houses. They have 25 editors. I mean, and they change over who's whatever, something, and people are constantly leaving, new people are coming, assistants are moving from person to person, whatever. I mean, I'm sure stuff gets dropped. I mean, and then stuff gets dropped here in my 1-person office, where I'm like, wait, didn't I read? I mean, I literally took 4 years to get back to someone on a manuscript that I had commissioned, and it took me 4 years to get around to reading it. So it was just like me and the author would exchange, guilt-ridden emails or Twitter messages from time to time, being like, okay, I'm almost gotten to it, or I've read the first 3 chapters, but now I have to stop because I have to go to a convention, or whatever. So I don't know. It's everyone's in a constant state of triage in the publishing business, and in the music business too. Actually, it's there's always the sort of the push. What's the maximum amount of money making material you can produce, and it's true for artists now too. I mean, so I mean that's why I wrote 4 books last year, and why I'm going to write 3 books this year, and possibly 4 books next year too. Hopefully only 3, but we'll see. I feel like 3 I can do comfortably. 4 is a little bit of a push, so but we'll see. Plus Daron's Guitar Chronicles on top of it. But all right, let me check out some more questions. Let's see. Which character was most difficult to draw? Okay, I think that's probably a question for Amy, who's the artist in the chat here. Oh, asking C-Tan. Okay, difficult to draw. I mean, I guess you mean most difficult to conceptualize. I don't have any trouble conceptualizing characters at all. They walk into my head as fully formed people, and then I only find out a lot about them as I write their story. But it's not really like I sit around going, I wonder how this, I wonder what's going on with this character, right? Because it's sort of like, I know I'm going to find out if I just, so, it's like, because the story is from Daron's point of view, I mean, Daron seems very clear a lot of the time, and other characters seem very unclear to him, but that doesn't mean that they're unclear to me. So, I think I know what's going on with Ziggy anyway, most of the time, but all my characters have the ability to surprise me too, where you suddenly realize, oh, actually, yes, they're still being consistent to themselves, but there's this thing you didn't realize, or, whatever. That's just writing. I think that happens to almost everyone. So, yeah. All right. What is your favorite chapter or most memorable one? Gosh. There have been now, almost 800 chapters. So I don't know that I have a single favorite chapter. In the chat room earlier, I'm going to be reading in a little while. You guys actually voted for me to read the Pride Parade chapter, which is like somewhere in the mid 700s. That one is a pretty strong favorite, actually, of the recent ones. So I was kind of glad you guys picked that up. Cool, thank you. Just got a text. but yeah, it's like I can't pick. It's hard to pick out a specific thing. And it's funny because now I'm, here I'm proofreading the Kickstarter book, right? And the Kickstarter omnibus has the whole Jonathan section in it. And what's interesting is that while I was writing it, I really had this feeling like, I can't believe how long this section is. Like, this is going on forever. It's, and the whole countdown waiting for Ziggy to be released from Betty Ford, and then, all that. Hopefully all of you have read past that by now, since that was quite a while ago. That was all the way back in 1989, and we're all the way in 1991 now. But going back and reading it now, I'm like, wow, this is some really, really strong writing. Daron is really moving forward in an extremely linear way that he often doesn't. There's a progression of how that relationship comes together and falls apart. So it's like that whole section, used to be sort of like my least favorite section, and now it's like kind of become one of my most favorite sections, actually. And the thing that's my least favorite about it is that there's no Ziggy in that whole section, except that he kind of is hanging over the whole thing, but he's not present, like he's present only in this sort of omnipresent way. He's not, you don't actually get to enjoy his presence there. So yeah. And Meg actually asked, what's been the most difficult chapter to write so far? And yeah, that section I think was really the hardest section to write. And undoubtedly because I was processing a lot of stuff from my own, old relationships or, whatever, even though I never had a relationship quite like the Jonathan relationship, but I have been through that kind of, I don't know, like emotional codependency where, I don't know, somehow everyone's happiness becomes entwined in this, ideal of couplehood. And, I don't know. I don't know. It just all comes out that way. And I don't feel that way now, but I'm in a relationship now and Corwin and I just had our 25th anniversary, and we don't have the issues that that Daron and Jonathan had, or that I in some previous relationships, in my college years or, wherever had. So, I've grown up a lot. Daron's grown up a lot, so yeah. But yeah. Let's see. Chris says, most memorable to me was when Daron went to pick up Ziggy in California. First time I read it, I cried. Second time I cried. Third time I felt sick. Then I started trying to avoid it in rereads. Oh my God. I literally felt sick writing it. I mean, and the thing was, I felt sick like stone pit in my stomach leading up to what was going on, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew he was going to get there, and that, I knew what was going to happen. And then what I didn't know was that I didn't know he was going to do the thing of like getting heat stroke and then pulling off at every exit and, trying to make it through with like just drinking Gatorade and crying himself to, half to death. That I didn't know was going to happen. I knew. So I had the dread leading up to it, and then it all came out. So yes, that was literally physically painful to write. And I've had to reread that section, recently to proofread it too, and whatnot. And it's doesn't hurt as much this time around. I mean, now that I've read it many times, I mean, dozens of times probably. But that will not be the section I'm going to read tonight. In fact, let's do the reading now. Actually, while my other computer is still working, I'm gonna I pulled that chapter up earlier in one of my other windows. So the part that you guys voted for me to read is the chapter called "World Shut Your Mouth," which is the recent-ish Pride Parade chapter. So. As usual, from Daron's point of view, and we're in New York City, and it opens at Ziggy's apartment. So, and I think Daron doesn't actually, right? He doesn't know that this is what's going to happen. They've been hinting to him like that we're going out this weekend, but no one has told him what they're doing, and so then this just sort of springs on him, right? The first of two stylists arrived in the morning, His name was Bernard, and he was a tall, willowy black man with close-cropped bleached hair, which was a striking contrast to his brown skin. I gathered from the banter going on between him and Ziggy that he was a drag queen who wasn't in his drag yet, but he would be getting into it soon enough after he was done with us. Every queer in New York would be getting into their drag or finery or marching boots or whatever that day. It was the day of the Pride Parade. This is the problem with mostly seeing a city from behind tinted limo windows. You don't see the huge banners proclaiming the dance and rally, even though they're only a matter of several blocks away from where you're living. Not that tinted windows were the only reason for my obliviousness, of course. Blame my focus on the work if you have to blame it on anything. I looked into the mirror while Bernard ran his fingers through my hair, fluffing it and examining it. It's in fairly good shape, split ends here and there, but I can trim those well enough. The real question is, what do you want to do with it? I caught Ziggy's eye in his reflection. Won't the esthetician be upset if we do something she didn't approve? My idea is something temporary or reversible. Bern, I think he needs some color. Well, the ultimate and reversible is let's do it with extensions. He lifted a chunk of my hair up. What do you think? I can put a bunch of them in along here. Rainbow, or just fire engine red, or electric blue? He let my hair drop and dug into a bag. Red or blue would be fine with me, I said. Red is more my color. Is it? He had every color of the rainbow of fake hair in plastic bags, including Dayglow green, screaming pink, and hunter orange. The blue might just disappear completely in your dark tresses, my dear. Red it is, then. Zig, who'd you say was coming to do the makeup? Leo. He did the Stardust makeup for the photo shoot I told you about, and I want him to do that again. That gives me an idea. He went into the kitchen to use the phone. The process that followed included me washing my hair, I needed a shower anyway, and getting trimmed while sitting on a stool in the kitchen area. The bathroom wasn't the best spot for this, apparently, and then some sort of painstaking process attaching the extensions to my own hair at various points that were determined either scientifically or artistically, I'm not sure. And blow dry and spritzing with more of that stuff that made my hair specially glossy. These will last for 4 to 6 months for the average person, Bernard told me, while the blow drying was going on. Try to keep out of chlorine pools or hot tubs and don't yank on them too hard. Brush them from the bottom up when they dry, comb with a wide-tooth comb when wet, try not to get it all into a matted, sweaty, tangled mess. That might be difficult, I said. You know what I do for a living? What, are you a rent boy or something? He quipped. I blushed as red as the extensions. No, I know who you are, Sweet Pea. If you're going to do a lot of head banging, my advice is try not to pass out with your head in a pool of cum, vomit, or vodka afterward. That made Ziggy snicker. I'll try, I said. By then the makeup artist had arrived and had worked on Ziggy, but I hadn't seen the results. They'd been in the bathroom while I'd been in the kitchen. Bernard let me off the stool and I turned around. The sight of Ziggy took my breath away. They'd created a lot of what I'd imagined in that dream, where it was like making a galaxy of glittering stars cross his eyes. His face looked airbrushed, making it longer and more angular than it actually was, his skin as white as paper and a rosy hollow under each cheekbone, and bold blue eyeliner. Blue. I'd never thought of that. I didn't even know you could do that. With blue lipstick. Honestly, it was hard to recognize him except for the fact that I knew it was him. The makeup artist exchanged cheek kisses with Bernard and then stood next to me, his arms crossed. What do you think? Does it work? It works, I croaked. I cleared my throat. Definitely. I'm Leo. Daron. We shook hands and he tugged me toward the bathroom. Ziggy came with us. The big question is how recognizable or unrecognizable you want to be. I stopped short, catching sight of myself in the mirror. I ran my fingers through my hair. The red flashed as I did it. I tossed it. Neat. You like it? I do. It wasn't a drastic change, but it was sort of like when I'd first gotten that tattoo. It was just enough of a change that every time I caught sight of it, it was like I had to reformulate what I looked like in my mind. I don't think it's coincidence that it was right around then that I got that first tat that I finally settled on liking how I looked. I think it accelerated the process. Maybe that was why Ziggy changed his hair color and look so often. Was it because every time he did it, he got to, well, fall in love with himself all over again? Leo did my makeup, smoky and dark, concentrating on my eyes. A kind of motif had emerged by the time Courtney arrived. Ziggy was an angel, I was a devil. Bernard had called someone else to bring over something, small white feathery wings for Ziggy's back and small leathery black wings for mine. I wore black jeans and boots. Ziggy wore his white spandex and white boots, and neither of us wore shirts. I would have been skeptical about this except for the typically hot and muggy weather. I confess I was slightly skeptical about the whole thing, but it was obvious to me that for everyone else, this was standard operating procedure, so it was probably best to just roll with it instead of being a moron about it. When in Rome, right? Court was in a purple t-shirt with the words bisexual pride in white letters across the chest. She snapped photos of us in the kitchen with her camera before we went out. So who are we marching with? She asked while we were walking. I think it might be a bit much to actually march, Ziggy said, sounding much more calm and reasonable than I was expecting, almost like he was doing an impression of Barrett or someone. It might be a bit more prudent to spectate this time around. But you guys look so cute! And if we watch the parade, there will merely be hundreds of photos of us taken by bystanders instead of thousands and thousands, he pointed out. I feel strongly that Daron would probably prefer we not take that risk. He was holding my hand. I felt completely disconnected from reality already at that point. Yeah, I said. Besides, I promised Barrett we wouldn't make a scene, Ziggy said. I promised we'd keep a low-ish profile. Good luck with that. You're the cutest couple on the island of Manhattan right now, Courtney said. The word couple echoed around in my head, bouncing all around inside my chest and making me feel funny, like I'd taken a hit of nitrous or something. I kept getting glimpses of us in storefront windows as we walked, in the subway doors as we got into a car about half packed with other people who were obviously going the same place we were. I didn't let go of Ziggy's hand, except when I had to. And the one time someone gave us a dirty look, a middle-aged guy on the platform, I remembered clobbering the guy in the men's room during the riot at the Paradise. I felt I had a choice in that moment. I could confront the guy and prepare to attack, or I could ignore him. I felt a weird sort of pity for that guy. It was strange, like the world had turned inside out, and I realized the only choice that made sense was to ignore him, because he was just a sad little human who would never know the grandeur or richness or beauty of the experience I was living. It was almost like tripping, except there were no drugs involved. And like tripping, I lost track of where we were and what direction we were going. Fortunately, Court and Zig had some destination all worked out. We ended up on the curb on one of the avenues. It had to be Fifth Avenue, right? I don't know. Watching group after group go by. I had what is probably a cliched thought, i.e., how did I not know that this happened every year? This parade had been going on for over 20 years already at that point. Court had picked up some kind of guide from someone along the way. She kept up a running commentary telling me stuff like how many hundreds of groups were in the parade. I admit my mind boggled at stuff like a group of gay police officers. A large group, mind you, marching down the street. That was real, right? Not some kind of like ironic Village People reference, right? They're real, Court assured me. Have you been to one of these before? One of these parades? I asked at one point. Yeah, last year in Boston. They've been having them up there since before I was born, too. In Boston. And there was music. There were floats with loud disco and house pumping in the speakers, and there were convertibles with drag queens waving while movie themes played, and there were odd ragtag marching bands of various kinds, including one that was all kazoos, and a group of Brazilians who made a segment of the parade into a mini carnival with a small but intense percussion section, and there were groups holding hands singing protest songs or chanting protest chants like, "We're here, we're queer, get used to it." Thousands and thousands and thousands of people marched past us. I don't know how many. More than lived in the entire town where we grew up. More than could fit in the largest venue we ever played. More than bought the 1989 album on cassette or vinyl, and possibly more than bought it on CD. The point isn't what the number was. The point was that it felt to me like it was impossible that so many thousands of people right there were gay. But since they obviously were, my entire concept of what was possible and what was impossible had to change. Suddenly, everything was possible. Suddenly, my rage, which I normally kept buried so deep I didn't even acknowledge it was there, didn't feel like a lump of poison anymore. It felt like the bedrock of justice. And then the most extraordinary thing happened, made all the more extraordinary because I had no idea it was coming. Have you ever heard cheering start far away, and then it had it sweep through a crowd like wildfire until you were caught in the roar? This was the opposite. This was a wave of cold silence that emanated from wherever the parade was headed and moved backward, and I could hear it coming, like a bubble of a freeze wave from a UFO expanding outward and turning everyone to stone. The constant background noise of the music and chanting and cheering and clapping falling away to dead silence, till the only thing that could be heard was the sound of a lone car honking from several blocks away. in the middle of the noisiest city in America, in the middle of 10,000 people within earshot, no one made a sound. The wind didn't even blow, as if everyone were holding their breath. Silence. People around us held up their hands, holding ribbons with the names of the dead written on them, and I understood it suddenly as a moment of silence for our dead. I held my breath, trying not to cry, my eyes burning, my lungs burning. I had a flashback to the moment of silence for John Lennon after he was shot, when a huge memorial was held in Central Park. I wasn't there. I'd watched it on TV. The moment of silence was actually something like 10 minutes long. All the radio stations went silent too. I sat there cross-legged in front of our living room TV, my mouth clamped shut and my face as stoic as I could make it. I think it was Digger who made the snarky comment, but maybe it was one of my sisters. That's it? That's all they're going to do? Utterly missing the point of the whole thing. How could you miss the immense power in silence, in the collective will of hundreds of thousands of people doing something together? On television, it had felt like my soul was being yanked hard. Here on the street, in the middle of the stillness, I think my soul left my body entirely. I could hold in the tears, but every part of me was just cracking and seeping. I'm just a shell for the idea of who I am, you know? Just a shell. And then the cheering reached us, not somber at all. An energetic roar of outrage and ecstasy, all mixed together. Time moved forward again. The parade moved forward again. And I felt alive in a way I'd only felt alive on the stage before. Only this time it was because I was one of the mass of people cheering. I threw back my head and screamed to proclaim to the universe, I am alive. I'm here. I'm queer. Get used to it. That was that. And then I think the next chapter he sort of comes to in a convenience store and he's like, what the hell just happened? And they're like, you need Gatorade. But yeah, yeah, that was one of my favorite chapters to write. And I did not march in that Pride Parade, but I marched in one in New York City just a few years after that. And the moment of silence thing had become an annual ritual. So actually, I marched in the one that was not a parade as much as it was a protest march. So they reversed the polarity of we went in a different direction, and we went past the UN, and I did a lot of protest marches around that time. I marched on Washington, the big gay march on Washington in 93. I think it's like I can't even remember. 93 was definitely the year we marched in New York City, and maybe 94 was DC was either 92 or 94. It's long enough ago that now I've forgotten. And I marched many years in the Pride Parade here in Boston. Actually, here, wait. Let me see if I can find a photo of me and Corwin in the Pride Parade here. I posted it on Facebook a while back, but I think there is one that I can stick into the chat here. This is from 1995. Let me see if I can add it. There, that's me and Corwin in 1995. You can see the matching bisexual pride t-shirts and the matching leather vests and whatnot. And yeah, so I know, look, we're so skinny and young. Yeah, the photographer who took that, I think, oh gosh, what's her name? I'm forgetting now. She's a fairly well-known lesbian photographer here in the Boston area. And she started putting her old archives onto Facebook and whatnot, and so that's how I found that. Yeah, so, all right, you guys have more questions? Yes? No? Oh gosh, did I make you cry? I'm sorry. I made myself cry, but I managed to kind of hold it in enough that my eyeliner didn't completely run, and I didn't lose my voice. That's the rough part, because when I really get emotional, of course, my throat kind of locks up and then I can't read. it's very difficult. Let's see. What was I going to tell you guys? Something else. Oh, right. Okay, so looking at my producer schedule here. Um, uh, we've got maybe like 5, 6 more minutes to do questions and whatnot, and then I should probably pull the giveaway at about 10 of something like that. So this is your last chance to get some in. Let's see. What else was I going to tell you guys? I was going to. Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to do. I was going to post a photo from from my trip to Japan if I can find it. Because of course now it's not coming up. Why? I would have prepped. Usually I preload the photos into the posts, you know. But okay, I'm having trouble with the find function of this darn Mac right now. Just oh, I see. I'm in the wrong window. Let's see. I also have to spell things correctly while I'm searching, right? Or I have to have spelled them correctly the first time. Nope, that's not it. All right, never mind. I was going to show you a picture of. I think I might have, maybe I posted it at one point in DGC. I was going to show you guys a picture of me on Guitar Street, which is one of the places that, of course, Daron goes in the chapters where there's a chapter where, if you haven't read this yet, where he's on tour with Nomad in Japan, his first trip to Japan, and they go to a street where it's all musical instrument shops, and I went to the street. It was all musical instrument shops. While I was in Japan, I did a lot of fun things that were, some of which were Daron landmarks and whatnot. In fact, I saw Queen at Budokan with Adam Lambert as their lead singer, which was fantastic. So talk about a bucket list item. Seeing a rock concert at Budokan is, you know, I was like, that's a bucket list thing that I thought, well, of course I'm never going to get a chance to do this. But then it turned out that, you know, one of the greatest bands of all time was going to be in Tokyo when I was in Tokyo, and through the magic of the internet managed to get tickets. Yeah, so let's see, how many countries have you been to? Let's see, how many countries have I been to? That's a good question. I mean, you know, Mexico, Canada, the Philippines, China, Korea, Japan, England, Spain, Iceland. Where else have I been? I'm like trying to think. Aruba. Aruba is a different country. Technically counts as the Netherlands, I think, but you know, or it used to. Hong Kong, but I went there after it was already part of China, so that still just counts as China. Let's see. Where else have I been? I've not yet been to Paris, so it's like one of the places that's on the list. Haven't been to Italy yet. I want to make it there. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. I should look through my passport. My stack of passports now, because you know, I have to get a new one every 10 years. So you know, look through the stamps. Actually, what's funny is that they don't always stamp your passport when you go in and out of places. So sometimes it's like, you know, you can't always. So I'll be like, shouldn't there be a mark from such and such place? Or like, I have all these marks from Iceland, going through Iceland, you know, on my way to other places. But Corwin, who went just to Iceland and back, didn't get a stamp in Iceland. And he's like, I don't have a stamp from Iceland. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a stamp from Iceland? I've got like 10 of them. Yeah. Icelandair. If you ever want to fly to Europe from this area of the United States, apparently Icelandair is usually one of the bargains, especially if you'll agree to stay overnight one night in Iceland. It's like the price of your ticket drops, and then you end up spending that money in Iceland. But that's okay, because then, hey, get a free trip to Iceland practically, right? You would have spent that money on airfare anyway, right? So there's a little travel tip for those of you who want to go to, you know, London or Northern Europe and whatnot. Let's see. If you could play an instrument that you don't already, which one would you like to? That's a good question. I always regret that I didn't start the piano until I was like 16. My grandmother started teaching it to me at her house when I was about 8, maybe, in the summer. And, you know, and I played for like a week, and then, but my parents didn't have a piano. And my mother was very into music, and always encouraged us to take to be in band and to take lessons and whatever, but we didn't have a piano in the house. That just wasn't the thing. So we got one when I was about 16, and I started taking piano lessons, and it was too late. It was too late for me to learn to read the double staff. I had spent too much time. I already knew how to play about 10 instruments at that point. And I knew how to read the bass clef or the treble clef, but I could not read them together. It was like my brain just wouldn't do that. And using my two hands so independently, I mean, I can play the guitar, but which is sort of your hands moving independently, but they're not. They're working together to produce the sound. And moving my two hands independently was something that I just could not do. Maybe if I tried again now, and I didn't have 10 million other things to do, I could pick the piano up again, because the piano is so useful. It's so useful for sort of explaining to people musically what's going on. The guitar is not as useful for that. And it's, I don't know. Piano is probably my big regret. It's funny, I had a music teacher in college who I had a bunch of music teachers who all had sort of tragic stories. Like one of them was a brilliant piano player, and he could play his own compositions, and was a great composer. And his big tragedy was that he was this musical genius from very, very young, and when he was like 2.5 or something, it's like that he was already climbing up on the piano and starting to play and whatnot. And so his parents were like, oh, our child is precocious, and they immediately got him a piano teacher who he would go to her house and play the piano, and whatever, and it was just amazing because, or she would come to his house, something like that, and then she had a recital of her students, and they all, here he is like, I don't know, 3.5 or something, like really young, whatever, and the amazing thing was that he was ear trained already at age 3.5, and he could hear intervals, and they went to her house to do the recital, where it's all her students gathered in this one place, and he got up there, and they played him interval, and he couldn't do it. And they played another and he couldn't do it. And they were like, oh, and they thought it was the pressure or whatever or something. And it turned out that he had been learning on a piano that was out of tune. And when he was listening then to a piano that was properly tuned, he could not do it. And he had essentially been permanently ear trained to the wrong tuning. And it's like, oh my God, poor guy. Whereas another one was Gerald Shapiro, actually, who was the head of the department. Fairly well-respected American composer. I don't know if you Google him, you can maybe hear some of his symphonies, whatever. I heard many of them while I worked for him. I was his TA in his composition class and some things like that, in the electronic music lab and some stuff like that. And his big problem was that he couldn't play the piano either. And so here we are in this laboratory of all DX7 keyboards with Macintosh computers, and I was like, Shep, this is our salvation, is that those of us who can't play the computer can teach can't play the piano can teach the computer what our music is, though, and then the computer can play the piano for you. And finally, you don't have to feel as much like, well, I can't, I can produce the music, but then I have to hand it to somebody else to play, so but yeah, Shep was great. But yeah, piano would probably be the big thing. Although if I had time to practice an instrument right now, what I should do is just practice the guitar more. But like I described earlier today, my day was literally proofreading up until the minute FedEx came, and then running to put my eyeliner on and root the computers to do this chat. So it's like, yeah, there was not 15 minutes to pick up the guitar in today's plan, and there probably won't be much time later because I still have to write Thursday's chapter. It's Tuesday now, right? So I have not yet written the second chapter, and now there's a bonus chapter that just got triggered. I have not checked my email to see whose most recent donation topped that up, but thank you very much, whoever it was, because trust me, make me write faster. Go ahead, make me write faster. The great thing about a bonus chapter being triggered is that, well, not only does it mean money for me, it means that we get to progress the story faster. As some of you know, I've been talking about the Potter Index, that Daron's Guitar Chronicles is about to reach the same length as the Harry Potter books, which is which I had not realized is sort of a personal milestone of mine, but I guess it is. So those of you who know me know I'm super into Harry Potter. So I'm like, hey, and also it gives me a way of saying when people are like, oh, your series, it's so long. I'm like, my 9-year-old nephew could read Harry Potter. You can read this. Okay. So come on. It's a million words sounds like a lot, but actually it's not really that much in some ways. So yeah. But anyway, so I should do this giveaway. Let's see. Oh, you forgot to charge us for the 4th week of October in Patreon. Oh, yeah, Patreon does not have a way to automatically charge weekly. They only have a way to automatically charge monthly, and I kind of debated whether I should just ask you guys to change your pledges around to become a monthly thing, but I don't know. I'll figure it out somehow. It'll come out to the right number of charges eventually, but that's odd because I thought I remembered posting that because there was a preview of this chat in that post. I wonder if I wrote it and never hit post, which is entirely possible. The way these things go. Modern technology. But thank you all so much for supporting me. The thing that really makes this fun is that you're real people out there and you're reading the story and it's affecting you. And that's something that in the past I never could have dreamed would be possible. It used to be you wrote your manuscript alone in your writer garret, and then you mailed it off to someone, some faraway editor who would read it, and they would write you back a letter months later with their, thoughts and whatever, and then you would rewrite it and send it back, and then maybe a year or two after that, the actual printed book would appear, and then maybe people would read it, and then maybe they would send fan mail back to the publisher who might forward it to you. It'll be 4 years since you've written something by the time you receive any feedback at all, or or reviews or whatever. But lots of people don't read. I do read my reviews, but a lot of people don't read their reviews because they get upset about them being critical or whatever. And I don't really get upset about people being critical. If their criticisms are not valid, well, then I'm not upset because I didn't feel the criticism was valid. And if the criticism was valid, well, then there's something I need to learn from it. So it's kind of, as far as I'm concerned, it's win-win. But I don't get hurt easily. I feel very confident about my art, so yeah. But I know not all writers are that confident. And I go through my moments of low confidence too, where I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Especially in a rewrite, where I'm like, this book is terrible. Why did I do this? This is, I'm in the middle of rewrite on another book that's overdue right now. But I know that it's all going to work out, So meanwhile, today, I had to finish proofreading this Rockstar book called Hard Rhythm to Grand Central Publishing, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, this book is pretty good. It's like the plot all came together, all these things, but it took, a good solid rewrite and then some little fix-ups to really get it all to hang together, where it's like it was all in there, but some things need to be rearranged and whatever, and those are things that a good editor can tell you. With Daron's Guitar Chronicles, of course, there's no editor other than sort of the real-time tiptoeing across the tightrope. As I go along, I adjust my balance a little, but that's because I get feedback from you guys right away. I can tell right away from a lot of comments whether some ideas are coming across or not, and that kind of a thing. And of course, sometimes I'm like, ha ha ha, that nobody suspects what's about to happen, and then other times I'm like, oh great, people are starting to pick up that this is, I told you before, Daron and I had a bet as to who was going to be the first person who commented about whether he was developing a drinking problem. And it's like, this has been going on for a long time now, where it's been, and that's because that's also one of those things that doesn't, one day it's a problem, not a problem, and then the next day it's suddenly a problem. It's something that happens gradually, like so many things in Daron's world, like overcoming internalized homophobia, for example. So, these things take time. And that's why this format is where I can explore that kind of thing. Whereas in a regular, just 3-act, 250-page novel, there's maybe not as much time, In a 250-page novel, you get to see them fall in love. You don't get to see anything else, Like, you just get that little piece. That's what the romance novel is that little And if you want more, you've got to have a longer format. And unfortunately, with ebooks, we can have longer formats, and with the internet, we can have a longer format. So, and all the other media have their long formats. You have your long-running television series, your, things like that, movie series, etc. And books have their series and whatnot. But for the most part, those were, fantasy series, or, whatever, where it was the plot that was very long. Defeating Evil takes 7 or 8 books. Whereas, contemporary romance tends to be in the single book format, because the romance reader supposedly only wants to read the, whatever. And I said, well, maybe my reader isn't the quote unquote romance reader. Mine is the relationship reader. It's like, we don't want to just see the fall in love. We want to see the arc of the relationship and the development of it. And I feel like once you get characters together, also, readers deserve to see them together a little bit. Like, they've fought to get together. They deserve a little bit more. So, in some of my series, it's like, in the old days, it was, some of the books were really like, there's like the proposal, and then the next chapter's over. It's like that's the end of the book. Oh, I love you, bam, the end. And I'm like, now I want to see, them take on the world together a little bit now. So, because I think that's a really fulfilling thing to read, and that's me though, right? So hopefully you guys like that too, because I like to show a little bit more than just how did they get to the top of the mountain. It's like, well, then what did I want you to see the picnic they ate while they were there, and all that kind of thing, and them showing the pictures of the climb up the mountain to their kids later, whatever. Okay, I should do the giveaway because we're coming up on time. All right, hang on, I'm gonna. All right, so writing down all your names, everyone who asked a question, and then I'm gonna number them, and then I'm gonna pick a number. Pen doesn't write. Wait, where's the? I just put down the pencil from Tower Records, right? I should do this. Okay. Sorry, let me take 1 second to do this. Scrolling. I'm looking for the question marks. Right, okay, and this is the duplicates. Okay, great. All right. I'm gonna use the Dice Roll app on my phone. Dice bag. All right. Hang on, I want to put the sound on so that you can all hear and see it. All right, I think that's like 7 questions I wrote down. And I kind of randomized which ones of you are which. So, all right. Of course, number 8 came up. Number 8 again. Let's try this. There we go. Number 4. I don't know if you can see that. 4. That is Meg. You have won a Tower Records CD case or DVD case or whatever thing of that size. It says on it the famous slogan, "No music, no life," and the original yellow and red Tower Records thing. By the way, any of you who are fans of Tower Records, there's a documentary out now that was done by Tom Hanks's brother, actually, Colin Hanks, I think is his name, called "All Things Must Pass." And it's about the rise and fall of Tower Records, and is really worth watching. So I had fun watching it on the plane on the way to to Tokyo, actually. And so then I was like, well, on my list of places to go is Tower Records. So anyway, we're out of time. Thank you all for joining me to celebrate the 7th anniversary of Daron's Guitar Chronicles. I don't know if there will be 7 more years, but there's definitely a bunch more to go. So, no worries. People keep asking me, when is it gonna wrap up? And it's like, well, we'll know when we get to the end. That's what I keep telling people. We'll know when we come to the stopping point. There are definitely some specific things that are on the horizon that need to happen, and you've all seen the foreshadowing, some of them for years now, so those things are going to happen. before it actually ends. So so anyway, thank you all for being here. Thanks for following the Chronicles. Tell your friends. That's the real number one way that readership grows, is by people evangelizing, being like, hey, I've been reading this thing, it's really cool, you should get into it. And if you don't want to read it on the web, there's the ebooks, there's Wattpad, whatnot like that. You can read it on your mobile phone more easily, whatnot. By the way, one thing we've been trying to figure out is the site seems to be getting slower and slower, and we still don't know why. It's on the same web server with a bunch of other websites that are not having that problem. So, very suspicious. So, we'll continue to work on it. At some point, we may end up rebuilding the entire thing, and we'll see. But your feedback is always appreciated, so always let me know if you're having troubles, if whatever with the website, with things not loading, with the mobile app not looking right, or whatever. Not the app, there's a mobile version of the site, so forth. Your feedback is the only way that I know how it's going out there. So leave comments, send email, join me in chats like this, and we'll do this again, I don't know, in a couple of months, maybe for Daron's birthday or something. He would kill me. All right, thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.